I would filter all legislation, first of all, by the U.S. Constitution. Second of all, is it the proper role of government?
So when we look back at your voting record in 4 years, your voting record will actually match your rhetoric?
I want you to hold me accountable because I feel like elected officials need to be held accountable for the way they vote on legislation.
Welcome back to the second hour of the Thursday segment of the Liberty Lineup, the Naked Truth section where we think right and wrong, not right and left, with Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore. Today we'll be talking with Heather Gardner, who is running for Senate, and we're going to learn what really makes her tick, and we're going to ask her some harder questions. We'd like to thank our show sponsor, EOS Mobile, the only cell phone service that gives you the peace of mind that your monthly bills are supporting only conservative candidates and causes of your choice. Actually, you actually get to choose when you sign up which causes you want to support. So that is actually literally true. Call 877-367-7524. Be among the first 10 callers during this show today, and you'll get a special offer if you mention the Liberty Lineup show with the Naked Truth segment, Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore. Call now, 877-367-7524. That's 877-367-7524. Again, 877-367-7524. For more information, go to eoscell.com, eoscell.com. And, well, Ben, I'm excited to have our in-studio guests that we have now. Heather Gardner, she kind of actually touched on Tuesday with one of our other hosts, but we wanted to have her back and let her talk longer and more and really get to know what it is that she's running on and what
give an opportunity for somebody that's challenging an incumbent to be able to talk and at least get what's out there, because the incumbent kind of usually gets more of the air and press time. And I wanted to bring up that, sometimes people say, well, you guys are defending Utah. You guys hate everybody. And, it's not about hating people. It's that, there's people that I disagree with that I still like and support. But if there's somebody that I say no, that I can't support them or, we don't like them, it's because they're evil. They're actually working purposefully to destroy freedom. So there's a difference there. So we want to be able to give you kind of some time to be able to talk about some of the hard questions and be able to explain why you think that Todd Weiler, why you should be there instead of Todd.
And let me just say what kind of gets me excited is the fact that you are just a mom.
Yeah.
So with Defending Utah, we started doing activism because we were just normal people that saw problems and wanted to do something about it. We have no big business or big establishment connections, and so you're coming from I'm just a mom.
Zero.
Yeah, zero. Right. If we do, then my wife's holding out on me or something. But coming from just being a mom and seeing a problem, and the moms, the Common Core moms that have been fighting Common Core, there's so much energy and tenacity and passion among this group, and it's great to see that kind of passion then coming in and challenging an incumbent senator, and I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get what might come out of that, right? And so, Heather Gardner, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So what? Just kind of let everybody know, Heather Gardner. Say that name over and over again, right? And what district are you running for? 23, and that represents what area? Okay. Sorry with this background. We want to make sure that the mics are working well, and sometimes it's hard to check that out. But she's talking about how she represents District 23.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go.
We got it.
I got something now.
And you represent, and that area that covers is, again?
Bountiful, West Bountiful, Woods Cross, parts of Centerville, North Salt Lake, and part of Salt Lake County, the Rose Park area.
Okay. Great. So if you're listening, you didn't know what area you're in, that's what area you're in, and you need to look into Heather Gardner that way because you've got a choice. You don't have to stick with the incumbent if you don't want to.
Right. There's now 2 of us running.
And so I think that's an important thing well, let's get into what kind of gets you into being interested in politics in the first place.
Okay, I touched on this a little bit yesterday, but I very first got started actually as a child. My mom and dad were very politically active, mainly just because they were good, down-to-earth American conservative people. My mom was really involved in Eagle Forum with Phyllis Schlafly. My dad is a retired man of the Army for 26 years. Both of them would go to testify in Washington and at the UN. So from a very young age, I grew up in a very active family. And then my personal...
So being from Eagle Forum background, you're really in favor of how great the UN is.
Yeah.
Hint the sarcasm there.
Yes. And actually, I'm going back to the UN in March to New York to stand for good policy that is pro-family, pro-children, pro-life. So, came from that background, and then my personal quest, as I touched on yesterday, started in 2009. I have 3 children on the autism spectrum, and I went up to testify and work with Clay's Law, which is a law that would prevent against discrimination for children who have autism in insurance. And from there, I started fighting against Common Core and for parental rights in education. And then I became active in my local political party, the Republican Party in Davis County.
Great. And then, so running for office, what made you decide that Todd Weiler might not be the guy that should stay?
That's a really good question. Todd Weiler, I've looked at his voting record, and that's what got me really concerned. When I looked at the way he was voting on bills, I did not feel like he's voting conservatively, and I wanted a change there. When you look at, for instance, Grassroots or Libertas, and you look at those scores, last year in Libertas he was in the 50 percentile, and in Grassroots the 20th percentile, meaning...
So just so everybody knows, that's an F grade, right?
Right.
He's
F for liberty. He fails liberty.
He fails defending liberty, okay.
Right. So that is alarming to me because I am
It's not like a couple of disagreements, right? He's not getting a B or an A minus. He's failing.
Right.
Okay.
And the other concern that I have, honestly, is the way we treat constituents. I feel like you need to be respectful to constituents. And as I've watched some of my fellow politicians or representatives on Facebook and Twitter feeds, I've been concerned about the tone. And I'd like to be positive and try to remain that way as much as I can.
Yeah. So with his voting record, I'm looking at the Grassroots. Well, let's go into. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Kind of just some key policies. What are some of the big things that you wanted to focus on as a legislator?
Keep taxes low for middle-class America. So some of the bills that I'm really interested this time around, this session, I'm interested in the Food Freedom Act, which is HB 144, and I'm interested in SB 45.
What would the Food Freedom Bill do?
Food Freedom Bill would allow people to sell their food products without a lot of government encroachment.
Two people being able to exchange goods without somebody else getting in the way.
Right.
Gotcha.
I'm interested in SB 45, which is compulsory education revisions by Al Jackson. And that states that parents and children are not going to be punished criminally for truancy. Mm-hmm. And the reason I stand behind that is because I have one son that was chronically ill. And as a kindergartner, we were getting truancy notices because he was missing school too much. Well, that's a problem for children that have illnesses.
Chronic illnesses,
right. And I don't want to have to go to jail or have child protective services because I need to keep him home some days.
Right. Here's an idea for getting rid of federal education. Nullify the entire Department of Education at the federal level and make it illegal for their activities to even exist in the state of Utah. And it is a criminal offense to be an employee of the Department of Education or to implement any policy that they recommended. There you go. That's nullification,
In
full
Fed Ed.
nullification.
That's right.
In
Yeah.
Fed Ed.
I'm in favor of not having a federal Department of Education because according to the Constitution, education is a state right and an individual right. It is not a federal.
So
there
as
should be
a state
no,
legislator, how would you enforce the Constitution in that way on that issue?
That's a really good question because you will see that legislators are really divided on this issue and say that public education is part of the Utah Constitution.
Right.
So the Constitution would need to be amended on a state level.
On the state, but doesn't require us to be involved in the federal government's Department of Education, which is unconstitutional.
Exactly.
And so we can still have education as sticking to the Constitution of the state,
right.
and not have to be involved with the federal Department of Education.
Yes.
So even if someone's pro-government education, at a minimum, there's nothing they do at the state level that should come from recommendations from a federal level.
Or
No.
mandates from the federal level.
Right.
So how would how would you enforce the Constitution by keeping the federal government's hand out of Utah's education?
Well, first of all, we need to stop taking federal money because anytime we take federal money, for instance, Title I funding, then they dangle these carrots out in front of us and say you have to do this, 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 and this, or else we're going to take away your flexibility for spending. Mm-hmm. So Utah needs to get away from federal dependency and federal funding because we're a strong country, or not country, state, but we're a strong state and we can do that without federal funding.
We should be self-sufficient.
We should be self-sufficient.
That's what Utah believes in, right?
Especially
Right.
since the federal funding is being used to implement federal programs.
Exactly.
So that just came out recently. Only 7% of our money is well. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Common Core just came out with a graph, and it was said like 7% of our funding comes from the federal government, and the rest is ours. But yet they have 100% control.
Yes, and that's a problem. They're using a very tiny sliver of funding to control curriculum and ideologies in the classroom. And as a state, I'd like to see us become more independent and break completely away from that.
Great. What are some other examples of legislation that you're looking at this year?
I'm looking at beekeeping modifications. I think it should be legal if you want to have bees and make and sell honey. Why not?
I totally agree. We can get down to core principles as to why that should be legal, right? And to the principle of private property ownership. When
Right.
something belongs to you, you have full control over whether you use it, get rid of it, sell it, or whatever. As soon as someone else exercises control, it violates your right to private property of the thing you own. So a lot of times on these bills, we get lost on what do I think about this issue.
We are going to a break, though.
Oh,
and
we do have a break.
we're going to talk about the importance of these principles so we can stick to the principles can always be applied to all bills. So even though the bills are different subjects,
Mm-hmm.
if you understand a key principle, it doesn't matter what the bill says. You can understand if it's good or bad.
Right.
And so it's important that we understand that. But this is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore, and we're talking with Heather Gardner, running for Todd Weiler's district, District 23, and the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. For more information about this topic, go to our Facebook page, Liberty Lineup Radio Show. Like and share. After the break, we're back with Heather Gardner. This is Ben McClintock with my co-host, partner,
Enoch Moore.
not that kind of partner. And back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com with the Liberty Lineup Naked Truth segment from defendingutah.org, sponsored by EOS Mobile, the cell phone service for conservatives. And we are talking with Heather Gardner, running for District 23.
And we were just getting into principles, and we were discussing how principles are how you can determine whether a bill is good or bad. Instead of just looking at a bill and thinking, what do I think about this issue? It's what I think about this principle. And we were just talking with Heather at the break and coming to understand she seems to understand that.
And if you're from her district, we'd love to have you give her a call and ask her a question. The number is 801-254-5855. 801-254-5855. Give Heather Gardner a call and ask her about anything you want to, especially if you're from her district. So one of the questions I wanted to talk, getting back to principles, the thing that got you interested in politics, I mean, kind of as an adult, was about discrimination with the insurance company. And so I wanted to ask you, now, kind of being involved in these things, would you still, what do you feel about government's role in preventing people from discriminating?
I believe in free market enterprise, and I believe that it's not the proper role of government to tell businesses what they should and should not be doing. So my viewpoint has changed over the years because my husband is a small business owner, and there's so much federal and state red tape that gets wrapped up in telling businesses what they can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So that does not foster economic freedom or progress in our country if we're consistently mandating and telling companies what they should and should not be doing.
Yeah.
Well, that's incredibly refreshing to see someone running who
has a vested interest in more government.
No, I do not want more government.
Right.
Right.
No, I'm saying sometimes people say they've got a vested interest. I need the government to do this for me because...
Right.
But then you said, you know what, even though that I have a vested interest, I know that you understand principles, and so doing what's right is bigger and more important than your own pocketbook.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's an important thing that more politicians and more just individuals, I think without a customer base, if people started to understand that it took theft from other people to get their free bennies, then they wouldn't be you get rid of the customer and the government doesn't have a service to provide anymore.
Exactly. I think we live in a society these days where people feel entitled that I need this and I need that, and they expect that from the government. And what I've learned is that nothing is free. There's no such thing as free services. And the people that end up paying for it are the taxpayers.
Right.
And so if you're a middle class everyday mother and father, you end up having tax increases at the gas pump and sales tax. Now we're talking about internet sales tax if you're a small business owner that sells online.
Oh, yeah.
So federal encroachment and state government encroachment is trying to snub and snuff out anyone who's financially independent and self-sufficient.
So what's Todd Weiler saying about the internet tax?
That's a good question. I don't know.
And I know he voted for the 5-cent increase in your gas tax, though.
Yes.
And so gas would be 5 cents cheaper today if it wasn't for Todd Weiler and others.
And Prop 1 in our county passed. So that was another proposition that I was against that passed in our county, Davis County.
Another tax that, as a part of that, being put on the ballot was because Todd Weiler voted for that, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And so those are some key differences that he supported that takes more money out of your constituents' pockets that you would not have done if you were there.
I would not have. I just went to a seminar yesterday or luncheon with Americans for Prosperity, and part of what they talked about is getting rid of occupational and professional licensure. I have a social service worker license here in the state of Utah, and I've had it for many years, and I have to pay a licensure fee every few years just to keep that license up, which I think is ridiculous. If you've worked in the profession, you know what you're doing. You have already paid your dues. Why should I have to pay a fee to the government to keep a card in my wallet? So DOPL and Department of Occupational and Professional Licensing, I think, is taking money from taxpayers.
Right. It's just another tax.
Right.
Should it take more training time to receive a license to be a hair braider than it does to be an EMT?
No, and that's the story they shared yesterday. I was blown away by that story because here's a woman who's just trying to put food on her table and do something to make money, and the government comes in and tells her that it's illegal. Yeah. And she has to take, 1,400 hours to get a license to braid hair.
And the principle of private property comes into play again because your labor is your property.
Right.
Your time that belongs to you. You wake up in the morning, you have 24 hours, 16 hours, whatever, to take your time and do what you want with it. That you own that time. And so when someone tells you what you can or can't do with your time, then that's violating that principle of private property.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that, what are some kind of contrasting? We want to make sure that, and I appreciate your desire to have a positive campaign, but I think it's important to tell differences because sometimes not just saying I want there to be another choice on the ballot. That's not really a good enough reason probably to vote for you just because you're the other choice. What are some contrasting things that Todd Weiler did this, I wouldn't have?
Okay.
Or things that he's promised to do that you promise, say, if I'm there, that's not happening.
Right. He has a bill coming up that is about teaching 8th graders gun safety in the schools, which I think the concept of teaching kids gun safety is a good concept. But I've been a middle school teacher, and I've tried teaching 8th graders, and that could be scary. But not only that, I don't think it's the proper role of government to invite in the AG's office and another government entity to teach children about guns for several reasons. First of all, as a parent, I teach my children on the range, and we use actual guns.
Right.
And in the classroom, you can't use that. That's what he's proposing, is you cannot use real guns. So
it seems like it makes the child smart enough to be dangerous.
Right.
Because they think they know something, and they see a gun, they're like, okay.
Right. Not only that, but it's a pilot program that he wants to expand over time that schools can opt in. Well, it's great that schools can opt in, but it concerns me that it's a pilot program that we want to expand, because to me that means money.
Right.
And it means government encroachment on education. What subjects are going to be taken away? Are we not going to be teaching math and science because we're using time to teach this?
Well, they just expand the school day and keep your kids away from even longer.
No. So pull in, and several parents piped in and said, we can do this for free. There's programs where parents and business owners that own ranges can come in and teach this for free. It can be taught as an elective alongside parents. It doesn't need to be a federal or state program. So that's kind of an idea where we would differ, is that I'm for free market enterprise, I'm for bringing in small business owners, and I'm for parental rights. So I'm not sure I would want my children learning about guns in a scared sense or a sense of a hostage situation.
Right.
I want to teach them to defend themselves.
It sounds like the bill actually puts guns in the light of only being used in violent circumstances, that you're in danger whenever you see a gun.
Right. My children know how to use a gun. And like I said, we've taken them to a range, and I want to teach them not to be afraid. I want to teach them how to stand up and defend themselves. And in public school, they were afraid because they were constantly being taught about shootings and people coming in, and basically...
So it's more of a propaganda tool as opposed to an actual education tool.
I don't think he would say that, but I think it has the potential to go in that direction.
I'll say it for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben McClintock says it. And,
it's a propaganda tool. It
and
seems like to me.
Right. So great. Get kids out on the range and get them learning about guns, but I don't think it's the proper role of government to be doing it during the school day in state-funded program.
There was a wise man named Ezra Taft Benson once who said that the government should not compete where anything where free enterprise is capable of handling, of addressing something.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
There was I don't know if you know the history of why the state is dealing with this compromise between the House, between the legislature and the governor with the expansion of Medicaid. And that there was actually a bill to nullify Obamacare in the state. Mm. And that there were a couple of legislators that pretend to be conservatives that killed that bill.
Yes.
And now what we're dealing with is what they turned it into. They killed it by substituting it with made it, instead of about nullifying Obamacare, made it about how are we going to expand Medicaid. And so now you've got those two things, and you've got another legislator. I'm having a blank. I should have had it in front of me. There's a senator up in your neck of the woods that was saying that they need to bring in Obamacare expansion, which is the Medicaid expansion, slowly. So he's not against it. He's just saying we're failing by doing it with these two plans, and so we need to do it one step at a time. Mm. And so a lot of times bills do that. Enoch, maybe you can look up that legislator.
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
And we'll do that. They've got this plan, and it actually goes back to Karl Marx. That's how he said in the Communist Manifesto, how do we expand Marxism is not from one huge thing, not say, okay, here you're a capitalist, here's communism, don't you love it now? But by small steps, one at a time, that people think of as being insignificant.
Right.
And so how do you think that you can help, because as a part of being a legislator, they always talk about, well, you need to kind of negotiate, you need to compromise to be able to get things done. And so how would you kind of protect yourself from supporting bills that were a part of this one step at a time approach to get us more and more government?
Well, it's that philosophy of boil a frog slowly,
right,
by degrees. And I would filter all legislation, first of all, by the U.S. Constitution. Second of all, is it the proper role of government?
You're so extreme. That is what.
Wait, you want to like uphold your oath of office?
Yes.
You're gonna mean it when you say, "I swear to uphold the Constitution."
Yes. In fact, my children are memorizing the Constitution. We go over the Declaration of Independence. They have the preamble memorized. We want to know exactly what the Constitution says and uphold it.
You know, you shouldn't be able to even make that oath if you don't know what it means.
Or haven't even read it.
Yeah.
Right. So I would weigh legislation against that. But not only that, is it encroaching, like you said, on private industry and on personal property rights?
It's just a little bit and it gets us further down the road on something else is better.
No, because that's how it happens. We open the door a little crack, and then all of a sudden we're on our way to socialism, to Marxism, to communism. We're far away from the American ideals that our founding fathers started this nation on. So even if you open the door a little crack, the problem is government puts their foot in the door and shoves their way in. So any government program just begins to expand bigger and bigger.
We just recorded that. We're going to hold you accountable.
Okay, that's great. Go ahead.
So when we look back at your voting record in 4 years, your voting record will actually match your rhetoric? Is that what we can hope for?
It should. And if it doesn't, I want you to hold me accountable. Because I feel like elected officials need to be held accountable for the way they vote on legislation. Part of that is that the voter needs to become informed and look at how they're voting. I go down to Capitol Hill and I see the way they vote. And if I don't agree with the way they vote, I'm not going to elect them back into office. I will not reelect them.
There's something that I've noticed going to the Capitol. Watching things that even expand on voting records, because a lot of times they're smart. They know that people are watching their voting records, and so they to keep a clean voting record, they do things behind the scenes to kill a bill, so that their voting record is clear.
Yes.
And so I think it's important that we understand that as well.
It's been scary going up to Capitol Hill to see how many backdoor meetings go on that I've been invited to. And my husband's kind of funny. He said, you need to keep your location services on whenever you're going to one of these political, because he's kind of scared I'm going to drop off the face of the earth, because I've been in so many backdoor meetings where I see that they're trying to make a compromise between two parties. Mm-hmm. And for me, it should be more about principle. So we need to stick by the principles that we were elected under and our Constitution. And if you don't like what I have to say, then don't vote for me. But I'm not in favor of backdoor deals. I think it should be transparent.
So what will you do to help kind of bring that to light? Like if you're in the legislature and you're seeing these things, helping people know that, hey, these guys are doing stuff behind the scenes.
I think legislators serve their constituents, and I think part of what we need to do is get word out to our constituents. Because if you are an uneducated or uninformed voter, it's hard to make those decisions when election time comes up. And so if you see something shady that's going on as a legislator, you need to get your constituents involved and let them know that it is happening.
That's not going to make you any friends.
I probably will not be a popular person, and that's okay. I want to stand behind principle rather than popularity.
But then you won't get anything done because no one will like you.
I disagree with that. I think you can get things done by principle.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're being sarcastic.
I know.
Being sarcastic.
So we're going to break in just a minute. We want to make sure that people know Heather Gardner, District 23. Which covers the areas again of what?
Bountiful, West Bountiful, Woods Cross, parts of Centerville, North Salt Lake, and Salt Lake County.
If you have a question for Heather, our call-in line is 801-254-5855. Heather says she will hold to her rhetoric in her voting record, and that will be a unique thing if that happens.
This is Ben McClintock.
And Enoch Moore.
And this is the Liberty Lineup radio show, and this is the Naked Truth segment where we want you to think right and wrong, not right and left. And you can listen on air at 6:30 a.m., k-talk.com as well. And listen to the archives of the show. For more information about the topic, go to our Facebook page, the Liberty Lineup Radio Show, and like and share. And also, we'll have a lot of this interview put up, so you can listen to this and share, especially if you're in the district, so you can help people get the word out for Heather Gardner. Let them know. And we'll be back with some more breaks, some more questions after the break, if I can actually talk. and for Heather Gardner, running against Todd Weiler in District 23. And helping not just understand both, because it's important. And I've liked what you've done is talked about the principles that you stand for, not just about why Todd Weiler shouldn't be there, which I think is
I agree. We agree with. We agree with as.
And so it's one of these. The Declaration of Independence talks about self-evident truths, and Todd Weiler not needing to be not being there in the legislature, I think, is a self-evident truth, based on his record, based on his behavior. And this has been McClintock and More saying this. We don't want to put these things on you, Heather, but because you're being very positive. But at the same time, it's important that you do, and you're doing a good job of exposing why it's important that people would give you a voice. We're right back with Heather Gardner running for District 23.
Call us 801-254-5855.
This is Ben McClintock
and Enoch Moore.
Back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com with the Liberty Lineup Naked Truth segment, sponsored by EOS Mobile, the cell phone service for conservatives. Save you some money, sign up for EOS Mobile. And we are talking with Heather Gardner, running for District 23 against Todd Weiler. Or for District 23, and Todd Weiler's the guy that's trying to challenge you.
Yes.
So we want to... What are some other... You talked about the core principles guiding you and the importance of staying away from the slippery slope of giving in for the supposed, to certain compromises for the supposed purpose of moving another agenda that's important forward. And we mentioned we wanted to bring that... What was that bill? What was that legislator again? That senator up in Ogden was Senator Christensen.
Karl Marx was his name. Oh, no, Alan Christensen.
Alan Marxenson.
Alan Marxist. The son of a Marxist.
He when the negotiations fell apart for the between the legislative version of expanding Obamacare and the governor's version of expanding Obamacare, and he said, this is failing. We just need to do this slower. We need to do it one piece at a time. We've got an article up directly about that at
defendingutah.org.
And
I said it first.
defendingutah.org. What's the name of the article again? It's been a while.
The article's called Utah Republicans Implementing Marxism with Medicaid Expansion.
AKA expansion of Obamacare in Utah. And so he said, we're failing and just doing it all in one fell swoop, so we've got to do it one step at a time. And so so that's something to watch out for, is because these guys do one step at a time. And so recognizing that one of the things you talked about of your shift from when you first started waking up to stuff to what's going on and being involved, you mentioned that a lot of times, a lot of our listeners are going to be shocked by this, but elected officials don't always do what they say.
Yeah.
What brought you to that conclusion? I don't think anybody could ever believe that.
What brought me to that conclusion? Seeing and watching actions. Actions are different than words. I talked to you a little bit about how I would be a no voter, meaning if I haven't read a bill.
Not that you wouldn't come to show up to vote.
No, I'll show up to vote. But if I have,
vote's going to be no.
Right. If I haven't read a bill, or if there's a portion of the bill that I don't agree with that has some rolled in junk, like the omnibus bill that just went through,
right,
I'm going to vote no. And one of the examples I gave you is just one of the federal bills that just came up was Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. Mm-hmm. What got me started with that is...
Are you against students succeeding?
I am not. I think students need to succeed. But
against that bill, right? You just hate children and you want them to all just fail.
Yes, it's all for the children. That's the popular slogan. But I spent 3 days reading through every single page of that bill. It was over 1,000 pages long. And there was stuff in there that was so alarming to me that I made a big post online of all of the sections, just the facts of what was in the bill, and I posted it. And it got over 900 hits within 2 days because people were shares, not hits, but shares on Facebook, because people were astounded by what was in this bill. And the problem is you get legislators and lawmakers that get bills, and they only listen to the talking points rather than actually digging in and seeing what's rolled into the bill. So I may not be popular in that way, in that if there is something rolled into a bill I don't agree with, I'm going to read it and I'll vote against it.
Right. So how do you, I mean,
that tactic they use, you know, the title of the bill is usually the opposite of what it does.
Yes.
Right? That's what we see so often. You know what we need to do is we need to have a state bill, and we'll title it, All Legislators Get a Pay Raise and Preserving the Federal Government.
Right.
and then they'll just all vote for it. And then let's put a bunch of pro-liberty stuff in it. There you go.
Make the language actually about nullification.
Right.
And repealing laws. But the bill says you need to give a pay raise.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you know, the side of liberty often is just too honest. We don't pull tactics like that. But another aspect I think is important to bring out is that your opponent is trying to buy your vote.
Yes.
And tell us about what's going on with the Buy My Vote and how Todd's going along with that.
So it used to be here in Utah that you went through a neighborhood caucus and convention system to be elected to positions. For instance, I was elected as a state delegate. I went to my neighborhood caucus meeting, I met with my neighborhood, and I ran for county delegate. I'm elected to county delegate. I go to my caucus convention and meet all the people who are running for office face to face. And then I vet one candidate based on my neighborhood's values and my values to go on to a primary. That used to be the only route here in Utah that you could make it to the primary ballot. Well, along comes a group called Count My Vote that wanted to make it different. And the legislature entered into a compromise with them, they say, to keep the caucus. But as a result, we came out with SB 54, which Senator Weiler is one of the representatives that voted for it.
A big vocal supporter of it.
Yes, he is a big vocal supporter of it. And the way that it is now, you can collect signatures. You can just go out, hire a firm to go door to door to collect your signatures, supposedly.
So you're paying money to get people's vote.
Yes, you are. Essentially, that's what's happening. So to give you an example, Senator Weiler collected his signatures within 2 days. He hired a company.
I'm sure they did all free. A bunch of volunteers just got like 1,000 people to just go out there and.
No, I believe he said he paid $8,000.
Oh, so he admitted that he paid a bunch of money for it.
He did. He admitted that he paid.
And so $8,000, you know, that's something that the little guy can really just go out there and just, I've got $8,000 in my pocket. I'll just pay for this, right? So this supports the little guy getting into office, right?
No, it doesn't.
They got money out of politics now, right?
Right.
No.
Because now you have to have money. Wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Wait, you mean that this is another one of those cases of people saying something different than what's being done?
Yes,
Weird.
because the system favors, first of all, the incumbent.
Right.
And second of all, it favors people that have the money to go out and raise funds or to hire someone to collect signatures.
Right.
And it also, interestingly enough, I read that they were giving a free app to realtors to incumbents. But it was not offered to challengers. So if you're a challenger to an incumbent, you don't get this free app that will show you where all the Republican or Democrat houses are, so you can go knock on their door. You have to be an incumbent to get this special privilege.
Wow.
Yes, and if you're not going the signature route, you're not listed on the lieutenant governor's webpage yet.
Wow.
So even though I've declared candidacy, I've opened up my disclosure folder with the lieutenant governor. I've started using funds towards my election. I'm not an official candidate. I don't count because I haven't declared intent to collect signatures.
Because you're not going with the establishment.
Exactly. So they get a head start. We are not allowed to declare candidacy until March, right before the caucus convention.
So
and
Count My Vote really preserves the power of the establishment.
Yes.
Is really what they're doing.
It expands the power of the establishment. We got a call.
Okay.
Jason's on the line. Jason, you got a question? You're on the air.
Just letting the audience know, Count My Vote showed up because the Republican mafia got scared after Bob Bennett got the boot. They saw that the great unwashed had awakened, and people were starting to learn and fight for their liberty, and they can't have that. So the Romneys, the Levitts, the Huntsmans, the Gail Millers of the world, they got together and they come up with this Count My Vote nonsense, and they pitch it to the less informed part of the state, trying to make you think you're a victim if this doesn't pass. Well, Count My Vote will destroy the caucus system and make people like us, it'll make it a lot harder for us to get good people elected. This is about power consolidation, maintaining power.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate your call.
Yeah, any candidate who goes the route of gathering signatures, really, that's a big red flag.
Well, it's interesting about how Jason, our caller, actually went into a little bit about how the background of what that happened. And we had a leaked email from the meeting that actually created Count My Vote, where it was formed, and how it was actually they brought a guy from California in to speak about how to get Utah to be like California, how they were actually purposely able to get California from electing people like Ronald Reagan to electing Republicans, electing a guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And how can we do that in Utah? And their solution was to do Count My Vote. So that was their purpose behind Count My Vote.
Count My Vote is the result of conspiring men.
Yeah. People working together behind the scenes to do evil in secret.
Well, and you'll see a shift in this election year. I had a legislative chair tell me he has never seen campaigning start so early as it's starting this year, because those that are not collecting signatures are having to fight back against those that are collecting signatures. Right. And so here we are in January pouring funds and time into trying to fight back against money and popularity and incumbents. And he's concerned because the caucus and convention system right now, as it stands, is the best system. But this year, it's turned into utter chaos.
It's the election way to make people actually accountable, because when you're trying to reach the masses, you just have to do it in a real quick bumper sticker statement. You can't really do anything. But with the convention system, you actually have to talk to the guy running for office and ask them in-depth questions and actually do follow-up. And it's more than just the 20-second bumper sticker.
Yes, I call people on the phone, and I'll tell you, they grill me. They have their list of questions of 20, 30 questions, and they go through a full-on interview, which that's the way it should be. Exactly. If you're going to elect somebody, you should know exactly where they stand on issues and on ideology. It shouldn't be just, I have the biggest sign and the most money to get my word out on billboards or on the television.
If you like me, if you like puppy dogs, vote for me. And
right.
If you don't vote for me, that means you hate children.
Right. So ask questions. I think that's what it's about. That's the process.
Yeah, and you can't do that when we're doing the primary. If you look at, again, California being the example, it doesn't happen. You can't do that because you're just trying to spend all your time raising money and making friends with the people that can make you that money, which are people that are a lot of times invested in getting the government more and more power.
Well, I've been blown away at how much a campaign actually costs.
I bet.
As I've sat down, people say, you're going to put out at least $50,000.
Right.
So every average citizen doesn't have that kind of money to throw around.
Real quick, Heather Gardner running for District 23. Do you have a website people can go to? Or?
I do. It's electheathergardner.com.
Electheathergardner.com.
Yes.
I see you on Facebook.
I am on Facebook.
Heather
yes.
Gardner. Heather Gardner running for District 23. This special thanks to our show sponsor, EOS Mobile, the cell phone service that supports conservative candidates and causes. Go to EOSCELL.com for more information and mention the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. Tomorrow is the Friday segment, the Hollywood Y Guy, and every day, 10 to noon, we have the Liberty Lineup, each 10 to noon on K-Talk. And this is Ben McClintock.
And this is Enoch Moore.
And we are on every Thursday, 10 to noon. This is The Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. You can find out more about what we're doing at defendingutah.org, where we want you to be not just a hearer of the word, but a doer of the word, because it doesn't do us a whole lot of good to complain about how horrible things are if we're not going to actually take action. So appreciate you joining us this day, and thank you, Heather Gardner. Appreciate you answering all those tough questions.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
See everybody next week.